Hello and good morning, and welcome to Gabe, aka VividVoid.
Hi.
Good day to you.
How's it going?
Good.
Good day to
Good.
you.
Thank you. It's afternoon here. We're having a 9 to 5 meeting. It's 9 for you and 5 for me.
That's right. Yeah.
Living at the edge of a good work day or something like that. Yeah. Nice to meet you. We just met for the first time, and I think this is the second time I'm interviewing somebody who I haven't met on this podcast. First time was Tashin, so thought we could just have a chat, find out what we're about, get to know each other, talk about God and the world.
Oh, it's wonderful. And if Tashan was on the podcast, then I'm in good company. So
Yeah, I think you are in general. Your colleague Rich has been here, and many other
great.
cool people from our scene. Yeah. Um, would you catch me up a bit on the becoming VividVoid story? You're a well-known Twitter account, but you're also an individual with a life.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. When I started VividVoid during the pandemic lockdowns, um, at the time I was trying to get off of all social media because I was feeling pretty suspicious of all of it. Um, and but it was a very isolating time, and I only had my son half of the week, so I was alone the rest of the time. And I was like, you know what, I'll permit myself one Twitter account, but no politics, no rage, no nothing. I'm just gonna follow meditators. I'm just gonna follow like people who are you know into the same stuff that I am, and try to avoid all the toxicity. And I was on there for maybe, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, something like that. And I found Visa, and I found Eigen Robot, and I found, Tyler Alterman, and Rival Voices, and all the people who were writing at the time. And I was like, oh, wow, like this is great, and just started getting in there and mixing it up with the other early teapot people. We used to call ourselves In Group back in the day. Um, and that was just about that was just writing about my personal work. I was writing about my therapeutic work that I'd done, and my spiritual explorations. And um, uh, yeah, I mean, it landed with people at the right time, and had the right message at the right time. And pretty soon, me and a bunch of other guys had these kind of crazy, weird tiger portraits because we were making our own weird little subculture. We called it Zen Tiger Dad Twitter. Um, Even though it's not a Zen tiger, it's like a Korean folk art tiger, but um, and it just kind of stuck. It just kind of became a thing, and then before I knew it, like I had enough of a following count, and I had enough people asking me about, do you do coaching? Do you do counseling? Do you do anything like that? And I just said, well, sure, let's give it a shot and see how it goes. And summer of 22, I went full time pretty much immediately because the demand was there, and it's been full time ever since. Basically doing VividVoid as a job.
Sick.
Yeah,
So
it's been great.
yeah, congrats. So full time means you're doing basically coaching and counseling for people that find you via Twitter.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, I don't know if I should do this right off the bat, but I'm like very interested in work right now, exiting my sabbatical, thinking a lot about money and and jobs and work and plan A's, plan B's, blah blah. We can talk about it. Maybe you have some good advice for me. But what's a can I ask you what's a full time earning or how you structure that at all? If that's not too close to home, respect if you don't
Uh,
want to answer that.
yeah, I think I want to discuss figures publicly, but I do pretty well. And I'm comfortable, I should say. I wouldn't say I'm like wealthy, but I'm comfortable. Um, what was the other question?
Maybe the question is how do you structure this? Like,
Oh,
do you give a how many how do you structure it with people? Do they book with you long term or do they book one offs? Do you how many sessions do you do a week or how do you structure that?
I have about 25 full-time clients, or maybe 25 weekly and bi-weekly clients, and then maybe another 5 or 10 who are monthly. So I see about between 20 and 25 clients a week. Um, I don't ask anybody for packages or commitments or anything like that. I really, my mentor was the same way. So I basically have just copied and pasted his model, but I work for my clients, and I work at their pleasure. And when they need me, then I want to be there for them, but I don't want to lock them into anything and have them show up and be like, I don't know what to talk about today. Or like I solved my problems 3 sessions ago, but I, still need, I want to make
Right.
sure that I'm actually delivering value to people when they need it. So I
Right.
just tell them, hey, just get a hold of me when you need me. If you want a regular recurring weekly slot, then we'll do that until you say, hey, like I'm feeling good, or you just move on and forget about me. I love when that happens too, because it means like you solved your problem, and see you later. Um, but yeah, no packages, no deals, nothing like that. Just when somebody needs me, they just set something up and we just talk for about 50 minutes.
Great. And who was your teacher? And I was also curious in general how your spiritual practice began.
Yeah, it began out of necessity because I was really lost. I really screwed a lot of stuff up. I just got out of the Marine Corps. Um, I guess it was 2013, and I was going to graduate school, and I was planning to become an English professor, and really had no idea what was going to make me happy or what I really wanted. And I knew I was having a lot of emotional problems, and I knew I had a lot of uh, early trauma that I needed to work through. Um, but I had never really found a therapist that I clicked with, or anything like that, uh, and I was pretty skeptical of the entire enterprise. So uh, I was looking around, looking for somebody that I hoped could help, and I met this guy, Samuel Stem, who was a therapist but also a Tai Chi master,
Hmm.
and longtime Zen practitioner, real weirdo, a lot like us. He actually went to Montana State University and studied with Robert Pirsig, who wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
No way.
Um, yeah, so I was pretty. He spent time with Bob Pirsig, and that was pretty cool. So anyway, this guy walks into the room when I'm going to meet him. He's 6'4" and he's wearing a kilt, and I was just like, "What is okay? Like, what's this guy's deal?" And it turns out he like loved to go to Burning Man, just like me. Like, we had a bunch of interests in common. He was just a real weirdo, but also a veteran, also like a biker, also a guy who struggled with a lot of the same things that I struggled with, um, and basically just really was like, hey, you're taking your life in this direction, and I really think that you should take your life in this direction. And basically what he said was like, look, man, like you've become a really great soldier, but you don't know anything about being a warrior, which means following your heart, which means like fighting for what you know is right, but really like from here rather than being told what to do. And of course, I was insanely offended when he, implied that I wasn't following my heart, but he was right. Um, and so yeah, I did like therapy with him for I guess about 2.5 years, and the sort of glib version is like when I stopped mistaking him for my dad, I was like, oh, I'll see you later, but basically, it was like I had to work out all this stuff. Um, and once I kind of worked through my developmental trauma, I was like, hey, like, see you later. He was like, see you later, man. Like, and I left for 6 months and I was doing my own thing, but I just kept thinking about like all of the internal change and the transformation. And I was just like fascinated by therapy, and I was fascinated by all the meditation he had me do and all of that stuff. And so I went back and I was like, look, like I think I'm done with therapy. I don't think I need any more of that, but I want to seek enlightenment. Can you help me with that? And he was like, I don't know, but his eyes were kind of sparkling, when he said it. So we did not. The next 5 years, we sort of veered off and started working in a much more spiritual mode together. And there was some therapy to it. Certainly, there was some, because he was a therapist, and he would explain a lot of things to me sort of across different modalities. Sort of like, well, you can think of it in a cognitive behavioral way, you can think of it in a psychodynamic way, or you can think of it in a Buddhist way, or you can think of it in a, which was very helpful for me. Um, but ultimately, I did not attain enlightenment. I don't believe that's a permanent thing that anyone does.
Hate it when that
But
happens. All
yeah,
the homies are trying
everybody,
enlightenment. Nobody
yeah,
attains it. Pfft,
nobody
so
gets
weird,
it.
man. Come on.
But I did a lot of enlightening, and I learned a lot from him. I'm very grateful for, and actually, sort of the last thing that he gave me to do, he gave it to me, which was basically go take a long retreat at the mountains, sit strong determination, um, and don't get up until the work is finished, which was basically like um, until you see what you need to see, until you have an experience of eternity. Um, and and I was not able to do that until my son turned 18. We were in the middle of a pandemic, and I wasn't about to leave my kid to go sit in the mountains and stare at the trees. So I waited a few more years, and then just this last summer, I took a wonderful retreat and went out to the mountains and had a very lovely, very brief experience, kind of peak experience. And then I went, wow, and went back and discussed it with him, and he said, yeah, like, that's what I was hoping you would see, and now you know it, and now you know it's there, and now you know it's possible, and now you do your best to live your life as though that's true. And so that's been the project ever since.
What is it you saw then? If it can be named?
It was just a really beautiful experience of a unity with everything and a kind of cessation of time and understanding, just a direct experience that eternity is just blooming all the time, and there isn't a linear progression to it. So I just really found a kind of beautiful sacred place outside of time, and where I really disappeared and really kind of merged with everything, and it was very beautiful, and and also very temporary.
Right. Funny. Well, thanks for that story. Nice to
Yeah,
hear.
you got it.
I
Plenty
I've
plenty
been
more karma to work through. Plenty more suffering to
oh
do.
always always. I Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance was the first book my dad gave me, um, in the context of my dad and I didn't know each other for, um, between I when I was like 4 and 18, let's say, no, 4 and 20, let's say that, and so he didn't give it to me when I was like 2 years old, but he gave it to me when I was 20, as in the first book he gave me, and I read it once and I don't think I really got it, but that was years ago. I think about 10 years ago. So maybe, and I've been receiving signs to read it again. They've been coming to me, so maybe I'll do that. Yeah.
I of course highly recommend it for obvious reasons, but I think the best time to read it is in your early 20s. But every time I've read it, and I've read it probably 5 or 6 times now, I get something new out of it. It's one of those books. It just keeps giving gifts.
That's good. Yeah, I'll have a look. What did you say about confusing your teacher with your dad?
Oh, I would basically go in there and I would start talking about problems from my youth, and then I would start transferring my feelings. I would start, instead of being like, I'm angry at my dad for this, that, and the other thing. I'd be like, you did this and you did that, and I was kind of in kind of a crazy place, kind of a traumatized place where I had all these feelings to work out, and I wasn't realizing that I was repeating these patterns with people. So I had to go in and repeat them with him, and then he was like, "Oh, like, okay, I see what's going on here," and he was kind of able to respond in a way that was healing for me rather than a way that kept me stuck in the patterns.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it happened to better men than you, I'm sure.
Uh, Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Does that happen to you when you work with people? Do people
Yes.
mistake you for their dad? Yeah.
Yes, and usually it's not that they're directly. It's not that they actually believe I'm their dad. It's just that these feelings, these patterns of feelings, will come, and they'll just come up, and they'll be compulsory, and they'll just kind of tumble out of the person.
Mm.
And when you recognize that that's what's happening, a big part of working with people is recognizing, like, oh, they're not talking to me right now. They're talking to somebody inside, right? And if you can recognize that, and instead of responding with your natural, if they're accusing you, or if they're angry at you, or if they're whatever, instead of getting defensive, if you can go, oh, hey, wow, you know what is it this person needs, like, what did this person not get that stuck them in this pattern, and then how do I give it to them? You don't have to get it right on the first try, because they'll just keep doing it with you, right, until you do. They'll circle back around to it.
Hmm.
But eventually you figure out, what is this person reenacting with me, and what did they need that they didn't get, and how can I give that to them? A lot of times it's just attunement and soothing, um, and really caring about their problems and being delighted in them, and the things that, like, you hope that a parent will do for their child, and that parents imperfectly do for their children, and then that sticks with us, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think it is often happens because pretty much like you said it, like that. Okay, here I actually have a. There's sort of, it always often feels like there's like a silo or like a barrel of gunk, and the top gunk just comes out first, and you
Yeah.
have that therapeutic chance to talk to somebody in a way where you're seeing, oh, they're actually listening to me. Even just the right stance of presence can be like, oh yeah, something I've been meaning to say to pretty much anyone. So, and, and then yeah, you have to you have the chance to get rid of these top gunk layers until before you even get to some other stuff, right?
This is true. It's true.
Yeah. You know, I have a question for you. Curious
Okay.
if you can. It's a personal question. I've in this sort of dead conversation. So how do I set this up so you have some context? So basically, uh, my very short bio is I worked at Twitch, like the video game live
Yeah.
streaming website, for 4 years, um, from when I was 22 to around about 27. And then since then, I'm 33 now. I've been, I luckily, this made me some money. I've been on a sabbatical that's very generative for this pathless path we're on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I see it in many people when we go um, on a, let's say, on a sabbatical or a sabbatical looking thing, where we take ourselves out of the nominal hierarchy of the world, let's say. And so you gain some and you lose some in that process, right? So and they both come sort of from the same source. So you gain that nobody potentially wants anything from you. You gain like this kind of insulation through a layer of money, let's say, that in this case, or maybe you even are more productive on a money front than I was, and you create a new profession for yourself, and then you're like not beholden to the previous thing, let's say. So I valued that for a long time now, but now very recently a new thought, a new movement arises in me, and it's like, um, uh, well, because before it was like, yeah, nobody can tell me shit really, and I can like make my own decisions and blah blah. And now it's like I wish I was embedded in a lineage. I wish I had a father. I wish I was a son. And I feel this in the I feel this in the wish for maybe entering the workforce again on, in on a little different developmental state than I've been before. I feel this in maybe uh, I haven't thought about this so much in changing the relationship with my father, even though that's pretty good. But I'm sure there's something to be found. Uh, as like an eldest child who always, who had this thing of I'm not sure if, I think many people around us have this kind of the gifted child, the child that grows up too fast, and suddenly you're the elder, and you feel like, I feel like my capacities of reason are a bit stronger than those around me. Why am I feeling that? That's sort of a very annoying feeling for a child. So now I feel like this backward movement of, hey, what if I can retrospectively find myself back in the son position where I feel like I've been playing father a lot also. Curious what you think
Sure.
about that.
I think it's absolutely possible to go back to those states of mind, and call up those memories and reconsolidate those memories, and work out those relationship patterns with someone who is willing to be nurturing towards you, and is willing to, um, let you attach to them and let you work out, whatever it is in the attachment that keeps you feeling like you want to go back there and you want to work those things out. That's what I did with my therapist, and I think it was, largely very successful. I also needed to do, some attachment repair work on my own, through no fault of my therapist. So he was never a father, himself, and so I think there were like particular things that were particular to me that I needed that he just couldn't fathom, and that's not his fault. And so I actually found a really great, sort of like guided imaginal meditation course that's called Attachment Repair that was very helpful for me as well. And a lot of that is, sitting down on a meditation cushion and, really vividly imagining, the ideal parent protocol like IFS, really vividly imagining some perfect nurturers, and just imagining like how imagining them parenting you perfectly, exactly what you need, exactly in exactly the right environment, giving you exactly the right kind of physical affection, the exact kind of connection that you need, and you just spend some time with that every day, and then sort of try to carry, more ease and more sort of like a better self attachment into your everyday life, and that worked quite well for me.
Very funny because I this thought or this movement in me arose through a great um, IFS session with Anita,
Ah,
needs
mhm.
29. Is that her? Is that her Twitter handle? A great friend of mine. We've known each other for a good while now, and she's so great at IFS. And yeah, I think with her, I stepped for the first time into this. Um, I'm not so familiar. I'm sometimes feel like very much in the same line. I'm rebelling against a lot of like terms and like kind of nomenclatures. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Um,
Ah,
but then they're obviously quite good for some reason. So I always love when these defenses of mine get bypassed. And so, for example, Anita gave me this great. I very much ideal parent moment meditation, and I was like, holy shit. And I saw myself as like a golden child, kind of the that where the parents sort of are hitting all the right spots, and
yeah.
I felt myself exalted into this golden little character, and that's exactly where this thought stems from. So can you maybe explain for another round how all these things work? Like, you speak very loosely about like, and I think many people around us know about attachment theory and stuff, but would you explain in a bit more layman way how what you just described actually worked for you? Like, what happened? What did you feel? What did you feel differently? How does that work?
I would say it's still it's still work that I have to do. Um,
And that's fine. I'm not, suggesting you're
yeah, it's
complete, or we
certainly
agree on that.
certainly not.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but what I did do, I think I can say pretty uh, confidently that I moved from a disorganized attachment style to one that leans just a little anxious. And so I'm still working on the anxious part, and I wouldn't say I'm quite at an earned secure place yet. But I know that I made quite a lot of leaps and bounds in healing this, and my style was very fearful because my father was schizophrenic,
Oh.
and so he was a very loving man, but saw demons and had real delusions, real hallucinations, and it was quite emotionally unstable. And so, I was attached to somebody who was extremely frightening early on in life, and that gave me a very fearful style of attachment, made me very afraid of the people that I attached to, just as a general rule.
Mm.
Um, and uh, the work that I did, a lot of the work that I did was just needing to be able to be afraid of the person that I was attached to. So this was a lot of the stuff that I did with my therapist. I just needed to be able to be afraid with him, and then I also needed to be able to express a lot of anger that I couldn't with my father because he would get too angry, right? So he would respond sort of reflexively, when I actually needed soothing and attunement, and when I actually needed like somebody to be there for me, I was getting anger back instead, and I was learning to be afraid. And so what I kind of needed to do with a therapist was like get really mad about things and have him soothe me and have him stay attuned and have him say, "Hey, this is okay. Like this is a space where this is all right, and you're going to be okay, and that's all going to be all right." Um, and so I kind of I needed to go through that, uh, and then I think what the sort of guided meditations have done, or the imaginal work I suppose has been, I think that's been a lot more repairing my. It's too simple to say it's repairing my relationship to the feminine, but it's more like it's giving me access to more of my own patience and receptivity and flexibility, without anxiety causing me to leap into action or leap to do something or leap to define something that otherwise needs to stay undefined or needs to stay um, uncertain or needs to you know um, I think I think that's probably, yeah. How's that for an answer? Does that feel concrete enough?
So I have to say, I mean, this is
Okay, yeah,
part of a little bit my shtick, that I'm like I said, I'm like, yeah, uh, anxiety leaps. I was like, yeah, I can imagine when you I what I hear is that when you're talking about relationships in general, and I also really want to talk about love with you, because I it's a great topic for me. Um, and I know that you're looking for love, as we all are, but you are also prominently doing that. So maybe we can help each other with that. And when you're talking about, for example, anxiety leaping to define something, that I'm hearing, uh, in a budding relationship, with someone, but in this case, I'm hearing more a woman, a potential lover, that that this moment of, okay, what are we, like, kind of, is that what you're talking about?
sure. Yeah,
What?
sometimes it looks
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Um, Sometimes it's sort of a really hard time feeling comfortable in a space where if somebody's like, "Oh, hey, I'm not ready to be exclusive, not ready to be committed, I'm actually fine with that. But what I have a hard time doing is opening my heart and letting myself move into a space where that becomes potential without those sort of promises being in place, right? So I live in this kind of bifurcated relationship space where it's like, well, we're either casual or we're going to do this. But most people spend some time, in this gray area in between where they do start to feel securely attached to the person before they make a commitment. And because I don't feel securely attached to a person until I have the commitment, and that's the anxiety, this has caused some problems for me.
I can relate to that very much. I can really understand that. Um,
Thanks. I appreciate that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's it's um, it's yeah. I think it was the same for me. I remember I am very lucky since yeah, I guess soon to be 2 years, 1.5 years. I'm together with a beautiful woman, and um, I well I know she's the one, and um, it's like, and the reason why I know this is that we mm, made a lot of these kind of agreements beforehand, and let them let allowed ourselves to fulfill them later, or to question them later, but we made them first, I think. um and and I remember when I came to when I first met her, how sad I was when we had to say goodbye, because we only met for like one day on a chance encounter. The second day we went partying together, and then um I had to take her home, and I really didn't like that goodbye. And then uh, 3 weeks later, maybe I visited her in Poland, and like the whole fucking like first 2 3 days, I'm like, she had to work, she had a school thing to prepare, and I was like journaling frantically, bro. I was like, am I in love with this woman? Because if I am, I'm gonna have to tell her. It's like I have it here, and if I tell her, then what's gonna happen, right? Like, what if, like, if like I have to assume she believes me, so I have to be sure that I'm truthful, right? I have to be sure that I'm not making something up right now because I'm feeling so romantic or something. I have to really mean it and be like, this has to be an sort of an all the way thing, but I can't see all the way. But I found, like, with like many desperate phone calls with friends and journaling with myself and being like, and like I really tried to, sort of crack it and be like prove myself wrong. Yeah, but I couldn't. So then at one point in the we were walking to the swimming pool, and it was like raining like crazy, and we were standing on the least romantic street crossing of all time. Um, and I'm like, I have to tell you something. I'm pretty sure I'm very much in love with you. And then the rest comes from there, And I, I needed that to, to. If that would have been too much, it would have been like, okay, then then that's not it, right? Um, So I know, I think I know what you mean. And there are more points in our relationship where we talked about how should we solve things? We live apart. Should we move? And and every time it was like I could see a shared intention ahead of, like, we didn't have to like MVP and prove it. It was more like, no, we decided and then we make it happen somehow. This is also what you're talking about, right? I'm not mistaken there, or
I think so. Yeah, I think that feels right to me. Yeah, it's
mm,
like it's a mutually declared intention. And it doesn't mean it has to be, at least for me, it doesn't have to be like a it's not like a marriage track. It's not like I mean, that would be fine, but it doesn't have to be like a we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. It's not that. It's just it's like I want to know that at a point when I feel, this is going to sound so sterile and I don't mean it that way, but it's like if I have a certain volume of feelings for someone, like if I'm like really into somebody, I start to be like, if you're not into me and if you're not interested in doing the same thing that I want to do here with you, right? Like if we don't want to build, if we're not on the same page and we don't want to build a life together in the same way, then I want to pull back because I don't want to get my heart broken, right? I don't want to like shatter myself on somebody um, who's not in it. And so that I think is the anxiety for me. It's like I just really want to know, like, hey, if I'm super into you, is she super into me? Uh, and do we want the same thing out of a relationship? And it doesn't have to be like, I mean, we already said that, but like it doesn't, there's no prescribed structure. I think it has to be organic to the relationship. I just need to know I'm on the same page and that the person's not like just having fun until they're gonna move on to somebody else or whatever. Like I just don't want to invest my life and time into somebody who's not doesn't want to do the same thing with me.
Yeah, yeah. So how's this whole love? Because how's this? Because love sometimes, it felt like a project for me. Before this whole thing, it felt like, oh, I need to balance love in me. I need to understand how I love and how I want to love, and what's good for me. And uh, I can see. I mean, I'm reading your Twitter, so I know a lot about you through osmosis, right? Like the passive. I scrolled past you and with you many times, and I seen you talk about men and women, and in that I can read your scratching on a preferentiality structure, let's say, that you have towards love and relationships. And how's that going for you? Like, yeah, as far as you are willing to talk about that, because I think it matters so much.
Yeah, I
Men and
I
women and love and everything.
well, I met a lot of really wonderful people through that post that I made. I made a post last November that was basically a date me doc, um, saying, "Hey, I'm looking for love. Here's what I'm hoping to find. I would like to get married. I'm um, open to having kids and would even like to have kids. And I just put that out into the internet, and I got a really wonderful response. I met a lot of really really great people, and I met a couple people in particular that like really resonated with, and some of those did not work out, and that's how it goes. And there's one person in particular that I really quite like, who I am still seeing, and I'm pretty happy with how that's going. And uh, what else? Um, in general, um, I think, at least in my present situation, it feels a little strange. It feels like life is a little bit on hold. I know you asked me a kind of universal question, and I'm being particular, but I live in this little
Always
mountain.
welcome. Hmm.
I live in this little mountain town outside of Boulder, that's quite isolated, especially during the winter. It's about a 45-minute drive into town, and the population here is mostly like skiers coming from elsewhere. So it's not a ton of romantic prospects locally, um, and that's all right. But I'm going to be moving into town in a month or so. With the hopes of starting a spiritual center a little bit later this year in Boulder. And in a way, it feels like once I get down into town and sort of like seeing my friends on a regular basis and not like a every 2 weeks or once a month type of thing, that I'll have a lot more to say and maybe have a better sense of what kind of life I'll be asking a partner to join in on. But I guess I'm very aware of this being a period of transition right now, that I'm not, I'm not really sure what I would ask a woman to be joining in on, because I'm about to start a nonprofit, and I'm about to be changing my priorities quite a bit, and I expect to be extremely busy, um, and so there's this stuff's kind of up in the air, but yeah, I mean, it's still a priority for me. I'd still love to meet somebody that I really click with and that I can really make it work with, and ideally somebody who's um, uh, you know, ideally somebody who's just as committed uh, to just being herself and bringing out the best in herself, and bringing into the world like what God wants to bring through her, and just really being open and receptive to that. And then any way that I can help her, like that's what I want to do. Like that's what I think a good relationship is like supporting each other, like be the, like incarnate who you are. Um, so yeah, so I guess how's that for an answer?
I think that's what love is,
Yeah, I
what you
think so too.
described.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, um, who? What's this band that made this great song? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
Who I just know it's
Is
Night at the
it the
Roxbury.
Backstreet Boys?
No. Who is this?
Does it? Oh, did yeah.
It's gonna come up in just a second here. Hadaway.
Hathaway. Oh yeah,
One kind of a one
that's
hit
that
wonder, maybe.
maybe.
Maybe they
But
had more than
every
one hit. I
time
don't know.
somebody says what I think love is, this song plays in my head.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So, I think you described what love is, and I think that's very good. Um, and I wish that to you, and I wish that to everyone, that this, and I love what you said about your transitory life and mm, your yeah, your future plans, because I was wondering also how it is, for you to, like, you know to look online, or like through your account, because I think when you described your future life, the one that would be the one that you would invite someone in on, because you're clearly on the path, so you're inviting someone in on that. um I was immediately like, oh yeah, but that seems more conducive to running a spiritual center, and being somewhere, and being findable and visible IRL. Whereas I was wondering what you thought about this. I think online, through the lens of the online world, despite the best attempt at a nice profile, a date me dog, there's so much of something I'm thinking about right now, like status or power or this whole thing, that I'm trying to re-understand in a new way. I would imagine it could be quite, what's the word, like, um, warping somehow, to find true love that you're clearly looking for.
I think that's right. I think that, well, I think there's more of a I think there's more of a tendency on people's part to idealize somebody who appears to be to have high status, or appears to have like a very large audience, or um, I should say, the experience of having 54,000 Twitter followers is not flush with power. It's flush with parasociality. It's flush with lots and lots of people who really think that they know something about you, and are really very obviously doing quite a lot of projection, despite your best attempts to be authentic, and that's okay. I'm not complaining about it, but it's not. A lot of people are bringing in a lot of assumptions and a lot of projections to a date me doc like that that you don't get if you just have a real life connection with somebody and they're like around you and they can smell you and they can see the way you are around different people and they can and they've known you for a long time, or they know your brother, or they know your whatever, right? Like, so yeah, there's a lot more. I mean, maybe a lot of the same problems that you just have with online dating in general, which is
Yeah.
that there's a kind of built-in commodification and maybe some desire for possession, and maybe even some desire for yeah, for idealization and for putting somebody up on a pedestal and sort of all that kind of stuff. And um yeah, so that, I mean, that was definitely sort of a drawback of the date me doc. And is that I just was kind of flattened and people sort of got to see like the best parts of me and they're not really seeing me as a full human. And but I think that's the problem. I think that's a problem with online dating generally.
Yeah, yeah, I pretty much meant that. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, oh my god. I mean, geez, at some point I was like, nope, it's not my path. Tried to
Yeah.
fill out the fourth profile, and I was like, kill me now. This is just not fun. Um, so weird.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel so blessed to have. And then I was like the old story of commitment to. I'm hereby committing to, you know, crossing paths with my future lover in on the very path I walk on. Like it will, and so it went. And that also helped me to be, what would you say, a little bit ready. A little bit like, because then it's kind of rare. If you're swiping, you're like, it's a dime a dozen. But
Yeah.
and also not really, because you don't get matches, so it's just a dime for even nothing. It's quite annoying. Um, unless you're some sort of Tinder hero, which I'm certainly not. Um, but then, in by the time I was ready to meet somebody, I think I felt an appropriate amount of scarcity. I was like, if you see someone and you see them in the right way, and they seem to see you in the right way, and everything you talked about earlier, and we talked about earlier, the commitments and the ways of people. I think if you have your eyes wide open and also your ears and your nostrils, and your all your pores, and you're like, you can sort of see the whole, how the flower would bloom. You can see it in seconds, right? If you're truly present, you you can roughly anticipate that. And I was like, when I met her, I was like, oh. First moments I thought, oh wow, I'm so lucky, because I had been meeting some people, and then it was like, oh, when I had to say goodbye, I was like, I do not want to do that again. I did not like saying goodbye to this woman. I will, and then I felt this very nice hunt, hunting instinct, of like, oh, I gotta stay close to this person. Yeah, hunting is maybe not the right word, but it is a little bit. No, no, this is the most important thing right now. I gotta go after this, and yeah, this was all based on sort of my um, limitation to real life, to meeting somebody in real life. You know what I mean?
I think
Because
so.
if you
Yeah.
think it could happen anywhere, or like, I'll just, if I want to meet somebody, I'll just rip through Tinder or Hinge or whatever. It's like,
Right.
then you don't, but then you're somebody in real life, and you're like, that's not that doesn't happen every day.
That's right.
And I think that
Yeah.
energy, you're like, let's make something of it. Let's take this one. Let's make some. And you're rich and poor at the same time, but you know what you got.
Mm.
I think there's something to. It's a nice setup for that. Then that's a nice container of love in you, somewhat of an open heart. That's not like spilling everywhere, but like has a nice viewfinder, and it's like, that looks nice. That could be something. Really
Yeah.
going after that.
Yeah. The I think that's really, and it's a really lovely observation. It's um, the commitment makes someone beautiful, right? You
Oh
can
yes.
choose, right? You can choose how to see human beings, and I'm going to try not to speak from a scar here that's relatively recent, but you can choose optionality is not wealth. I think there was a tweet this morning that was, I think I retweeted it, and it really like resonated with me, which is that like keeping your options open, keeping one foot out of a relationship, keeping one eye on the market, or whatever the case is like is profoundly dehumanizing to the person you love and to yourself. But it's also, it gives you this illusion of having surplus, or this illusion of having abundance, when what you're doing is you're like you're recklessly spending, you know, years being committed without being committed to someone that you love, and you're, what you're not doing is building richness and building connection and building depth and building a life that you want to live with someone else. um, you're just frittering away your life and someone else's, by treating them like they're fungible, or treating them like they're just interchangeable for someone else. It's like, yeah, it's a terrible way to live. It's a terrible way to treat people, and unfortunately, it's like the mo for, I would say, the majority of people that I know, and it's something that I pretty regularly rail against on Twitter, and one of the things that gets me the most upset. And partially because I see my old self in it. I did it for a long time too. It's as part of the culture, and then eventually I was like, Jesus, like, what are we doing? Like, what am I doing? What are we doing to each other? And and yeah, and so it's understandable, but it's heartbreaking to see that people aren't waking up from it. They're not looking up and going, oh my god, like I'm treating people like trading cards, or I'm treating people like vibrators, or I'm treating people like, something to just be swapped out, instead of like, somebody with whom I have this really like, you know deep and beautiful and irreplaceable, unique investment that I will grieve, even if I won't pay attention to that grief afterwards, or even if I'm gonna like pretend that I don't hurt after each one of these people. Like, you still do, you know. And I think like actually cluing into like what your real feelings are, what your real connections are with people, like requires there being a lot more respect for the interiority and individuality of people that you're otherwise just fucking and throwing away.
I'm really grateful on that front for a little bit of the trad, call it red pill or whatever discourse that, um, like concepts like, um, date to marry, um, or select in that way. I think in so many ways we're really talking about that. And um, yeah, no, I don't know. Nobody was the only relationship conversation that I could find when I was 20, no, 18 even. I was 18. I was like, I I've when I it's not, I wasn't an incel, let's say. Like I had regularly met, or like I found the girls that were like in school and stuff. I always had a girlfriend um every once in a while, and even longer term relationships. But then I was like, but I don't feel I have any control over who I meet, and I feel like not in control. And I would later say that that had very much to do with how I related to my mother, and
Hmm.
that there I felt like I was generally overpowered and out of control. So okay, I need something where I have more agency. That was the initial look for agency, and then the only thing came up was PUA advice, pickup artist advice, which is full of extremely valuable insight and brought me to, on the especially on the self development angle, brought me to Eckhart Tolle, Dale Carnegie,
Hmm.
um, Robert Greene, and the whole conversation about agency and power and meditation and the peek behind the curtain, right, where things are possible, where you can move and modulate things, which to me was completely new. So I value it a lot for that. But it also was completely ill optimized when it actually came to, uh, well, I even almost hate the word dating, when it came to actual more like mating and getting to know people. Let's not call it dating. Let's call it love and relationships, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And um, also in there psychologically a great lack of a father or a father figure, because there's a paternal, um, I think, imperative to tell a son. Let's stay in the male space here for a moment and say, hey man, you're hot shit and you should be able to get you what you want, and also you're a very sensitive being and you need to be loved very well, and it's not about notches on your belt, but it's about, in a way, the sooner, or if we want to be a bit more loose, at the right time, you would want to find a partner. And the more time you have to build, exactly as you said, the less time you spend. I mean, building your life with the life partner is like meaning on tap forever
Mm-hmm.
until you fucking die.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you do that? And so yeah, like, play your games and figure it out, but use everything as a learning experience. Don't be reckless with nobody, and don't be reckless with yourself. And that was completely missing from that discourse, from the PUA discourse. It was just a bit of a fatherless space, I suppose.
I
And then the more patriarchal space was then perfect to that also has its blind spot, but it equalized out
mm-hmm.
this part. And I realized, yes, Simon, change your fucking program. Stop. Like, sex is not a measure to for your self-worth. Get some female friends and see if they got something to tell you, or if you're being a douche all the time. And then if they like you, they'll introduce you to somebody nice, and literally, I met my girlfriend through uh, my one of my best friends, female, who I helped move that day. So, but yes, in terms of discourse, I think it's getting better. And I appreciated you talking about it openly, which I'm sure takes a bit of courage in
Oh,
our.
hey,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, I don't mind taking flack online at all. Like, I just expect it at this point, and actually, I take a weird, perverse pleasure in feeling like I'm fighting 40 people at once. I actually really like that feeling. So, um, you know, maybe subconsciously, I even set myself up for it. Um, I think that's a really good insight that that sort of pickup artist culture is very fatherless, sort of in its presentation. I don't think that's all of it. I think a big part of it too is a lot of these guys have pretty deep ego wounds that I think are mediagenic. Um,
Or what? Sorry.
Mediagenic, sorry. So they're like, the media really wounds people's psychologies in ways that we don't talk about very often
Oh.
because it's ubiquitous and it's not going anywhere, so we don't bother talking about it. But it's like 1 in 4 women have eating disorders, and they're almost all because of the media. And I think that men get real self-image problems too, but they don't manifest in the same sort of like easily clinically identifiable ways. But one of the ways that I think this happens is a kind of wound opens up in men's souls or in men's egos. Um, I mean that sort of in the Western sense, not as a bad thing, but just the story of the self. There's a wound that opens up, and it feels like the only thing that's gonna fit that is female validation, and then it works and it validates for just long enough that the illusion is that it's gone, and then when the validation leaves, then the wound opens back up again, but something in the ego closes off and says no, get more validation. But it's like it's not validation that they need at all. right? It's crazy. Like, I've had clients come to me and say, like, I'm worried about being an incel, or I'm worried that, like, I'm falling behind other men, or I'm falling behind, whatever. And I'll say, oh, and we'll just be talking, and then in the course of conversation, it'll come out that they've had 12 or 13 sexual partners, and I'll be like, I don't say this directly to them, but it's like, you've had 3 times as many sexual partners as most men have had. So where does this wound come from? Like, where is this chase? Where is this? What is it that you're actually looking for? And the sort of standard psychotherapeutic cliche answer to this is, well, you're looking for love from yourself. And okay, yeah, that's true. But it's not just like buying flowers for yourself. I mean, that could be part of it, but it's like what you're looking for is like a secure attachment to yourself, like that you don't abandon yourself, right? That you don't drown your sorrows in 12 hours of video games a day, and you don't like, you're not avoiding the particularities of your life, and you're not avoiding paying loving attention to yourself on a regular basis. Um, and that is what is keeping the hole open, and then eventually, like, I mean, the irony is, once they close the hole inside themselves, like, meeting a partner is just as easy as it gets, because people, regardless of sex, you meet someone who's like, um who's just happy and self-contained and confident and loves themselves and is obviously healthy. Like, that's just attractive, that's just beautiful, regardless of sex. And so I think there's this self-fulfilling prophecy that sort of pools in PUA and in red pill and in that kind of thing, where it's all these guys who are going to their, hilariously male lengths to understand and systematize and create these programs, in order to get female validation, and it works. But then they get the female validation, and they get the female validation, and then they're wearing the purple hat with the feather, and they're getting the female validation, and it's not filling the fucking hole, you know.
And if I may, one important thing about female validation in my eyes and in my experience is that there there are many sorts of female validation, and
Yes.
after what you described as, sort of closing the hole, becoming self-contained, that in that state, from that state, man, you know how much female validation I got from my girlfriend, and
Yeah.
how much I needed that,
Yeah.
like, and how much I also had a shield up to, for example, coming back to my earlier thing, to somebody, calling me a boy. I was like, or like or cute. I had a huge thing with cute. I was like, no, I'm not cute. I'm a man.
Mm.
Kind of thing. And but to really lower this armor, and to have and it takes so much softness to and to be able to receive that well, and to be like, hee, yes, I'm a good boy, and like, I really needed to find this thing that I just embodied a bit, that was somewhere taken from me. And that is what also, I think, made, at times where I was maybe had more of a hole in that, in my ego, or very much in the way you described, I was lacking the ability to be like, also just chill and cute. And I was just, masculinity, masculinity, masculinity. I gotta be somebody. I gotta be somebody. I gotta do something here. But chill and cute is very attractive, like,
Yeah.
very attractive. Nobody tells you that. It's like, and yeah, I had a whole line about this, with where I did a magic ritual with Jesse Hinterlander. I don't know if you've
Mm.
seen him on Twitter, or even met him. But we were at an event together, and he said, "Simon, we need to do a magic ritual." And I was like, "Man, finally something happens." We were at a Micro Solidarity summer camp,
Uh,
and
uh,
it wasn't it wasn't boring, but I was a bit bored because I was at Jess camp the week before, I think, and so uh, Jesse was like, "We got to do a magic ritual." I was like, I mean, sign me up. What are we doing? And he said, and first it was just for him. I was like, yes, I'll help you. Sure, and as if. And then he was like, I'm afraid of my hands. I'm afraid I will hurt. I only want to heal and build, but I'm afraid I I would hurt. And I was like, what do we do about that? I thought, had a- you know he I had a I'm not even sure if I needed half a day to think, but I was like, actually, I have an idea, and I have a straight razor, like a razor knife, like a shaving knife, not one where you switch the blades, but like a fixed one,
Hmm. Hmm.
that I bought um, in a moment of masculine joy, and
Uh-huh.
uh, and I was like, Jesse, I have this extremely deadly razor, and you can shave yourself with this, and this is a symbolic act. And we did a bunch of other stuff, but this is like a symbolic act in which you will obviously not hurt yourself, but this is so fucking sharp and so deadly. So you can at least prove it to yourself, and then from there on we can. It's like good idea. So and then okay, let's do it tomorrow. We made it a plan. I was like, I'm gonna have to shave my own beard, haven't I? And I had such a beard at the time, and I always hid my very mellow jawline, with the beard. I was like, this was my totem thing of masculinity. I was like, behind this beard, I'm a man. And I was like, I was literally afraid of showing my chin to a degree. I mean, I know it's not the end of the world, but I derived my power from this. And I was like, so I also did a full shave,
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
it was great, and it was and it I was so I was tripping so hard on this, and viscerally I was like, I'm gonna I don't know if I can show myself, and then I showed myself. I was like, and people were like, Simon, you look great. You look so cute. You look so shiny. Like all this ruggedness. I was like, damn, I'm gonna get used to that. And long story short, I met Julia 2 weeks after. You know,
Oh, wonderful. Were you clean shaven when you met?
yes.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The thing you're scared of is the power that you needed to move forward, right? Get what you wanted. Yeah, that's amazing.
So I think in this times it would be good to respect, to not be scared of being a cute man, a cute and kind man, and also to not just look for the rugged absolute unit of masculinity, but also find the place of cute and kindness in a man. And both I think both is much needed. But yeah,
I think just to add on to
please.
maybe paradoxically, um, a fear of one's own potential for harm is sometimes best ameliorated by learning to harm with great precision and skill. Um, because when you gain, I think everybody has the potential to harm, and we do it unconsciously, constantly. And the more consciousness you can bring to it, and the more skill you can bring to it, ironically, the safer you are with violence. I feel the most safe around martial artists and around former soldiers and around people who have been trained with violence, because I know that if we get into a rough situation, they've got a lot of control over when to use it and how much of it to use, and they've got real skill with it, they've got real mastery with it. And I think sometimes the fear of hurting other people is actually a signal that you need to learn how to hurt other people. um, so you need to learn how to do it well so that you can do it less.
Yes. Would you explain why it would be like, I mean, if you say learn to hurt other people, that's obviously contentious. So maybe you would like to
Sure.
expound on that.
Yeah, maybe in terms of, you could think of it, well, I mean, classically physically with martial arts, or you could train with a weapon, or you could train with something like that, and learn to wrestle, put a learn to put your aggression somewhere and give it a shape, so that it's not leaking out sort of unconsciously in other places in your life. But also emotionally, there's a time and a place to bare your fangs, and there's even a time and a place to like give somebody a warning bite that says, "Hey, it's not okay to go here," or "You're crossing an important boundary," or to give a warning, and to be just frightening enough that the person doesn't cross more of your boundaries, doesn't treat you like a doormat, doesn't, et cetera, so forth. Human beings do this. It's not a nice thing about what we are, but it's what we are. People who have poor boundaries and don't stand up for themselves get walked on. And so it's helpful to be able sometimes to push back and say, I'm not going to let you do this. And that's actually going to prevent a worse fight, or that's going to prevent a worse blow up, or that's going to prevent one of us from getting really hurt down the line.
Yeah.
So like being able to gradate um, violence, emotional or physical violence, being able to use a small bit so that you don't have to use a lot, I think is an important skill.
Yes. And you do obviously teach this with Rich Bartlett in a course called Fight Wise. So maybe we can talk a bit about fighting wisely. And, this is great because I actually wanted to, we can connect this also with the relationship topic, because when we had a big talk now about um, commitment and sticking to each other and building together. And one of the things that I've learned very much is that what I was looking for uh, in my partner and in my partners in general, that includes close friends, is the ability to pick or accept or have a fight and use that as a key building block. I think it's a key building block. And you have no outlook, in my opinion, on long-term relationships in love or in work, and that's pretty much most of what life is, and friendship. Um, if you can't have a fight, because you
True.
will.
Mm-hmm.
So if maybe we can talk a bit about this, and happy for you to introduce Fightwise and what you guys teach there, and maybe we can just talk about some maybe we can just have a little argument. No, maybe we can talk about the
Yeah, sure.
modalities
Yeah.
of
It's actually some of me and Rich's earliest interactions on Twitter were us like,
of
bouncing off of each
course.
other on things. And that
Dude,
was,
also fucking big man syndrome, honestly. Like
yeah,
it
yeah,
happens to me all the time. Like
yeah,
find a large and bearded enough man. Is it the same with Rich? Like
yeah.
contentious characters with strong opinions. I'm just like, I think first of all, fuck you, and what do you
Yeah.
mean by that? You know, I
Yeah,
have this
no,
so
it's,
much.
I get it. There's a pleasure in it. And there's also like there's a part of me that wants to know who can I bounce off of, and who's gonna be okay afterwards. And Rich always was like, whenever we would spark off of each other afterwards, I'd get a DM, or we'd show up in somebody else's comments, and we'd just be fine and friendly, and like, this is okay. We'd patch things up, and it's no problem. Um, uh, so yeah, I mean, I totally accept the premise of what you're talking about. You can't have good long term relationships or good long term commitments without the ability to rupture and repair. Um, and so with fight wise, what we're trying to do is help people who primarily default to fawning in a confrontation,
Would you maybe
move.
explain that briefly? Yeah, if
Sure,
you're about
yeah.
to. Yeah.
Fawning is one of the classic stress responses to confrontation. There's 5 of them. So there's fight, flight, freeze, feed, and fawn. Um, Fawning is basically like defaulting to people pleasing, becoming very obsequious, starting to flatter the person. Oh, anything you want, say blah blah. I'm going to calm you down. I'm going to whatever. And this, when it's unconscious, can become intense enough that people start to do things they really regret, really start to abandon themselves, abandon their core interests in the sort of like in the name of trying to calm someone down or win someone over or whatever that is. And then afterwards, of course, they've been out of integrity and they feel terrible about themselves um, and they've just given away the farm, and now there's this person in their life that feels entitled to be given away the farm whenever they get angry, and this is a bad pattern. Um, and so what we're trying to teach people to do is move away, is to notice when they're getting activated. So there's a real nervous system component to this that's important, and really zoom in on the parts of themselves that, when they're activated, sort of switch over from I'm in control to I'm doing something I'm going to regret. And if we can get right to that line and really zoom in on that and get them really familiar with that area, then that expands the zone of what sort of behaviors, thoughts, confrontations, situations they can go through without losing control and without doing something they'll regret. And so that's what the whole course fundamentally is about, is opening this zone of tolerance and making it easier for people to behave skillfully in intense situations. And usually what that means is moving away from fawn and moving fight wise. And so that's really, you know, obviously there's a double entendre there where we're saying, oh yeah, fight wise. And we also do some teaching about here's how you prep for a fight, and here's how you go after what you want, and integrity is always a win. And but it's less about teaching people how to fight in like a really sort of mature way, as much as it's about really telling people like it's you can it's okay to fight, it's okay to have a backbone, it's okay to have vital crucial interests that you will not back down from. It's okay to want to win, it's okay to fight to win, there's nothing wrong with that. Like if you think that you're right and you're defending something that's important to you, you should fight to win. That's important. And this is really hard for people who automatically fawn. Like they have this really hard time, like coming, like, what do you mean? Like, but if I win, then I've dominated somebody else. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe, momentarily, and they'll get you back if it's an equal relationship, right? It'll go back and forth. Um, so that's mostly what the course, I would say, is about, is helping people like untangle the issues that prevent them from standing up and fighting. And somebody throws a punch at you, like what stops you from throwing a punch back?
A lot, I think.
Yeah, a lot. Yes. Yeah, it's different for everybody. Yeah, and there's a
Yeah.
lot that everybody has to work through when they come in. But we've done we're coming up on 7 cohorts now, and we've gotten incredible feedback from people, like people saying it's changed their lives. I just had wonderful interview with someone who said she was in a shitty relationship all the way up until she took this course, and then suddenly found her backbone and got out of it, and I'm stoked for her. Yeah, it's been great. It's a pleasure to teach, and it's a pleasure to see how it's helping change people for the better.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you guys are doing that, and so I think you can just Google Fight Wise, and then it's on Find Your Backbone on the Hum, right? That's where you
That's it.
can
That's
book
it.
it.
That's Rich's company. Yeah,
And
great. That
you're
comes right up.
starting a new cohort pretty soon, huh?
Yes, April will be our next cohort, and well, I shouldn't announce this as though it's like a for sure thing, but we've been talking about doing a retreat for a while, and if Rich nails down this retreat center that he's been hoping to
Word.
get, which we know is up in the air, then we might be doing a retreat, and I would be stoked about that because it means I get to come back to Europe. Uh,
Ha, that's very good. Yeah,
yeah,
Europe, nice. Europe, nice. Great. No, I love that you're doing that, and I mean, I could also talk for ages about fighting wisely, and I mean, helped some people with that. Just helped my cousin. She's 22. Was together with a weird guy who
mm,
had obviously quite a hole, and I was like, no, and
yeah,
that's also so important. I think I think many women could also really use a little bit of that disagreeable uh, training, and it's so great in relationships also. For somebody who likes to fight like me, I don't know how it is for you, but um, what's coming up between Julia and I is right now this: she's discovering her anger, and I'm like, great, so you can fight me back
Good.
sometime, because
Yes.
I
Yes.
she's been annoyed by me fighting, and then she checks out, she doesn't know what to do, and I'm like, so I but it hurts her, so obviously I don't want to hurt her, so I'm learning patience right now. We're doing the thing where I need to back off a bit, and she needs to go on a bit, or what's the opposite of back off? Close in, I guess, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
backing off, she's closing in, so then we can meet in the middle, and so she can bring things up. I really appreciate when people bring things up. I think bringing something up is a fighting move. It's like, hey,
It is.
there's something here, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's such an antidote to, like, it's such a 80-20. Maybe it's not 80-20, but it's like, if you can bring something up, it's already the first move, right? I don't know if you guys talk about that in the course, but
Oh yeah.
because then,
That's yeah.
yeah,
Literally the last class of the cohort is we tell people we know you and we know there's a fight that you're avoiding, and so you're gonna like there's something you're not bringing up with somebody you love, so bring that to class and practice it with other students, and then your homework as you graduate from the class is go start a fight, go have that conversation,
start
go.
a fight,
Yes,
start a
exactly.
fight.
But do it in a
Yeah.
loving way. Do it in a way that preserves the bond. Do it in a way that stays connected and is mutual, and that isn't it's not intending to dominate. It's not intending to be aggressive, but it's like, hey, you know what? This shit's been bothering me for a while, and I need to bring it up. And yeah, people are shocked when their partners are relieved. Right? They're shocked when
Yeah,
their partners are like, yeah, like yeah, like, oh wow, thanks for telling me. I don't want to be sitting here pissing you off and you're repressing it for a year. Like, I want to just know so I can stop.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, really. Yeah, I can. The times in which I couldn't bring things up are now quite like far back in my memory, but I've
Yeah.
had them and they're horrible. And
They're horrible.
we
Yeah.
get taught it by our guardians, right? It's like, you bring something up, you get punished. So much, much. There's no shame in that. Who doesn't have it, in some sort of way? And I would really like to ask you something about this. It's a slight topic shift. Um, Something where I feel like I need to, again. It's on my learning journey, so maybe you've got something good to say about it. You can help me with it. So, thinking about power, um, thinking about a role that, for example, you find yourself in when you describe your career and you have a whole bunch of clients, and um, I'm sure many admire you, and there's always the sort of cult leader failure mode in the realm of being a spiritual teacher, let's say.
Definitely.
Um, and mm, I think I haven't managed, despite extensive study in all these fields. Clearly, we can, talk to each other. I know some stuff. I also know how to teach it. Many friends report to me, "Oh, that helped me so much." It happens all the time. I'm obviously a coach, but I haven't really managed to, like, to do the thing where I do the thing. And I think where I put it out there, where I'm like, I'm doing this for real.
Ah,
I mean it,
ah,
or even positioning myself, allowing myself to, like, slip into that role a bit, giving that advice, trying to sort of aggressively be non-Sally and authentic or whatever, but sort of nipping it in the bud, right? Like squashing the whole thing. I feel like it has to do with power, with in very much a fight wise way, in a risking. I don't even know anymore, but like, what I'm trying to do right now is to connect back to power a bit. To, like, power is not, like, forbidden, but also power shall not be misused. So yeah, curious if you got something for me on that.
I think that the it's good to hmm I the way that I approach the my own fear of sort of cult leader dynamics, or really what we're talking about is the same thing we were talking about earlier in this conversation, which is transference, which is when somebody comes in and sort of transfers the feelings that they used to have about their parents onto you. I mean, Christian priests use this all the time. They call themselves father, right, in order to solicit these feelings from people. Um, and you can do quite a lot if you're willing to be ethical in working with people's transference. You can do quite a lot to help them heal. Um, because you let them work out their patterns, and you be sort of a parental figure to them. But I think that needs to happen with informed consent, to the extent that someone can, like within a therapeutic relationship or within a well-defined relationship and roles, that it doesn't exist so much in coaching, doesn't exist so much in sort of like the sort of wild west of spiritual work. And I actually think a much better role model here is the recovery sponsor. And I don't know if you have like friends who've gone through Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or even Al-Anon or any of these kind of 12-step programs, but successfully recovered addicts are usually have a deep well of wisdom, and a deep well of really earthly wisdom. And it's wisdom that smells like coffee and cigarettes, and it's, you know what I mean. It's not holy. It's not perfect. It's not golden. It's not shining. It's just like, yeah, I've been here. You know, yeah, I've fucked up in that way. Like, yeah, I've, you know, oh, you're going through some like horrible, uh, some horrible thing. I'm gonna find that thing in myself as well, and like I'm gonna find the part of me that's monstrous, and that has like learned what to do with my monstrousness. And I'm gonna come talk to you and say, hey, I think this, if this is what's going on, here's what worked for me. I'm not going to put myself over you. I'm not going to put myself in some kind of position to be worshipped or to be, like even admired. It's we can admire one another's traits. We can admire one another's accomplishments, but it's not. But I want to be a spiritual friend to somebody, and I want to be somebody who's like maybe just a few years further down a particular path, but certainly not perfect, certainly not blameless, certainly not infallible, certainly not. I mean, none of these things. Just another human being who's like been extraordinarily stupid in certain ways, which has gained me some lessons that I can now share with you if they're helpful to you. But see for yourself. It's not God's own truth. I can't gatekeep the divine. Like everybody has to approach that in their own way. So to me, like that approach to it doesn't disavow your power. It doesn't disavow your ability to affect change in people's lives, but it does let you do it from a friendlier place. It lets you do it from a place that says like you're free to do with this whatever you want to do with this. And that's been very freeing for me and very helpful for me.
So you have okay. I hear that you've also struggled with this maybe, and you've adopted or adapted more of this frame, and then obviously the AA sponsor is a honorary thing. So how did you bring money into play with this, which is also, I think, power, money and power, kind of, I'm racking my brain about this a bit.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I think there's also
Maybe
something
why I
that.
asked you, sorry, maybe why I asked you about money in a way so early on, which is maybe a bit of a spillage in that sense. I always feel
Okay,
like there's
sure.
a
Yeah.
money shadow in my neck that's on my ass a bit. So sorry about that.
No, no, that's
Yes.
okay. Let me just add something on to what I just said though, which is also important, which is that I do think like following a really strict ethical code is important too. So I follow APA ethics, even though I'm not a therapist. I just stick to their all of their ethical considerations because I feel better about potential power differentials opening up between us when I know I have ironclad rules in place about confidentiality, about I'm never going to try to fuck my clients. I'm never going to try to go into business with them. I'm never going to, if there's been transference, like I'm not going to accept donations from them, for something that's for my spiritual center, right? Um, because that's inappropriate. It's an inappropriate use of power. It's an inappropriate use of the relationship. So having really ironclad boundaries around what you will and won't do, I think, is really important for this as well. When it comes to money, I can tell you the way that I look at this,
Hmm.
which is that, and this is sort of no. Well, the way I used to feel kind of resentful of my mentor because I felt bad about myself that like why do I have to pay somebody $150 a session to unconditionally love me? Like why couldn't I get that elsewhere? And I was like, well, because there was a window of life where it was possible to unconditionally love me. And I didn't get that because my parents were mentally ill and that's nobody's fault. And now I have to pay for that remedially. And that felt bad, and I felt like, damn, like I don't want to go like buy love from somebody. Um, but over time, what I realized was that this guy was going to be doing this work regardless of whether he got paid for it. Like this guy was like in people's lives and cared deeply about people. I think he still does, lives in a bus on the outskirts of a Zen monastery. Um, like not part of the monastery, but is constantly in there taking care of their emergency supplies. He's basically sort of like orbits the organization. The guy's just kind of given his life to healing people, and so what I was doing was not like buying love from him like a transaction. What I was doing was enabling him to have a good and comfortable life that he'd already devoted to healing and that he'd already devoted to compassion. And when I started thinking of it that way, as this is not a transaction, but that I myself have done the same thing, and I'm not looking to get rich. Like I used to, I was a businessman in my 30s. I made much more money than I am now. I could go back to doing that, but I don't want to. Like this is what feels fulfilling, and this is what feels good to me. And this is what I want to give my life to: is helping people heal and be there for them, and be a good elder and be compassionate, be a good teacher when I can. Um, and if people are willing to help me be comfortable and willing to help me pay my bills in order to do this work, then I'm happy to accept it. It still feels humbling, but I'm happy to accept it. um, how's that for a reframe? How does that feel?
It's almost like everybody who pays you is paying it forward to the
Yeah,
next person, because that means you can continue.
it means I can keep doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And also like I try to give 25% of my time to low income clients, and that is some of the most rewarding work that I do. And it makes it takes the guilt off of charging my normal rate that I do, which is 150 a session to people, um, because they're enabling me to work with somebody who otherwise can't even afford a therapist, can't afford anyone, and I can charge that person $15 and I can see them twice a week. um, and we can work through some really difficult stuff that they would otherwise never have access to do, and that feels wonderful. And so yeah, so it's not that somebody's paying me to love them or paying me to be their friend or paying whatever. They're like paying me to be able to do this for everyone as much as I can. Right? They're paying me to be able to do this, and um, that helps a lot. That's helped me a lot, I guess, with the inevitable guilt of charging for this, because you want to give it away free, right? Like you want to be able to.
It's a wonderful reframe. Thank you for it. It's
Yeah,
very
I hope
nice.
I hope it helps.
is like an artistic. It's like actually it's a reframe about a lot of money. I will think about this for a little while, because I haven't thought about it like that, about like this you're future proofing the person you're giving stuff to. That means they can do it again. You buy a nice painting, that means they can make another one
Yeah.
that then somebody else can buy, so they can make another one for the art itself, for the next people who receive the art. And obviously coaching is an art form.
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
I think more than medicinal form, and art is what brings us close to uh, the unalienable spirit or God, and so does coaching and like therapy, I guess. So I think that's the whole point. Good stuff, man. Damn, hits me kind of hard, honestly. Thanks. It's great.
Happy to help.
It's very nice. It's very nice. Oh. So I heard you're starting a, a center of sorts. Would you like to talk about that? I'm very curious about it.
It's still in the very early stages, and I haven't gone super public about it or anything yet. I'm just now putting together the board of directors. But I have written the sort of prototype design document just to explain the vision to myself and how I expect the whole thing to work. And essentially, what I'm seeing is well, what I'd like to do is open a Dharma based center that is like the Berkeley Alembic, which is to say, it's not contained in any one lineage, but it's kind of a postmodern center that is going to host many different lineages, many different teachers, but we're all going to be organized around one kind of sort of central set of ideas, which is that strong people are connected people. And so the tellus of most Dharma centers is enlightenment. It's transcendence. It's the cessation of suffering. And I think that's great, and I think that that should not stop. Um, but what Western Dharma really poorly understands, or I should say Dharma in general really poorly understands, is the Western weakness of self, the savage inner critic, and this may be more of an American than a European thing, but the savage inner critic, the fluid identity, the real difficulty people have knowing who they are, knowing what they want, knowing what they stand for. Some of this is an excess of narcissism in the American character. I don't mean that in a pathological way necessarily. It's just a little bit too much. It's a little too much obsession compulsion. It's a little bit too much. It's unbalanced, right? There's something unbalanced there, and the way the Dharma is typically taught, unfortunately, reinforces a lot of these problems in the Western character rather than addressing them. And so, Dharma type people in my generation understand this pretty well. The older generation is very averse to psychotherapy and very averse to psychology generally, which is like fine. Um, but what we don't have are centers that like blend these two very skillfully. And so what I would like to do is create a center that basically focuses on four connections. So connection to self, connection to body, connection to community, and connection to God or the divine. Um, and I'm actually pretty agnostic about how we do that. So that the people I'm teaming up with are mostly Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhists. Um, I have a background somewhat in Zen, not really formal, but my teacher is a Zen guy. Um, and so but so with the connection to the divine, what I'm really interested in is this folk religion that we've got going in the West, which is this kind of mix of psychedelics and psychotherapy and Dharma that's really electric and really alive, and that hasn't ossified into any form yet, but that's really changing people's lives, and it's really like helping a lot of people with their problems. And how do we take this charge, and how do we help renew existing religious structures and existing spiritual structures with this charge? Because there are Christians that are participating in this. There are Jews that are participating in this. There are, and they're not thinking of it as a religion because it's this kind of postmodern thing. But it is. It's just it's a religion in its earliest, wildest form because it's still very alive. Like it hasn't become traditional yet. It hasn't become forms. And so my question is, well, how does this weird spirit that has developed or that we've found, how does it help Christians? Can it? How does it help Buddhists? How does it help Jews? How does it help whoever? How do we get people to get a direct, unmediated experience of the divine and then go back and renew their faith communities? Because it's not, America's never going to stop being a Christian nation. The question is, what's the health of Christianity? And I would, I'm not a Christian myself, but I'd love to help if I can, if there's something I can do to help them. And same thing just with anybody generally, if they want to just find that felt connection to the divine, not something that's dogmatic and not something that's intellectual, but that's directly experienced. I think that's life transforming. So that'll be one pillar of the center, and generally using dharmic methods to do that, but wanting to make that available to across faiths. And then the connection to community, something I really want to focus on. Sacramental times of life, I think it's a huge failing of New Age spirituality in general, that there's very little community service and there's very little like emphasis on serving your community. I think there's a reason that New Age spirituality and yoga and all this stuff cashes out in narcissism so often, is because there isn't this focus on being of service to others, and maybe that's an allergy to evangelism that comes from traumatized Christians not wanting to go out and do it. But there are people dying alone every day. There are people that are suffering. I mean, they're suffering all the time, and I think that we're really missing something in Dharma communities by not making ourselves available and not explicitly organizing to help people that need the help. So I'm talking with a Zen priest and a Vajrayana priest right now about putting together a hospice program to sort of kickstart doing volunteer efforts at the spiritual center, which is basically just like making Buddhist priests or practitioners available to the dying if they want to speak with somebody at the end of their life, and if they've got questions about spirituality, or if they've got, I mean, they're obviously they're always wrestling with these questions at the end of life. Most people are, or if you just have somebody there who can just hold your hand and who can say, hey, like, I don't know either, but here's what I think, and maybe help comfort them, or maybe even just give their exhausted caretakers a break so they can go to the grocery store, so they can whatever. And I want to start there, and I want to eventually, move out into more community service. I'm sorry, I'm being very long-winded right now. Is this okay?
Well, it's clearly very important to you, so
Yeah.
please
Okay.
keep going.
Thank you. And then the connection to body, I think I don't need to say much about that. If this is mostly a teapot podcast, like it's helping to bridge this feeling and getting into embodiment. This will probably be the last piece of the puzzle for me because it's the one I understand the least. For me, martial arts was the way in, but I know for a lot of other people, it's yoga and it's Tai Chi, and it's so I want to get embodiment practices going. Probably 2026, 2027, it'll be down the road. And then the connection to self is sort of my baby, is the one that's like closest to my heart, is really building a strong sense of self, because I didn't have one for a really long time. I grew up Catholic, I joined the Marines. All of this is completely about self-abnegation and pushing yourself down. And when it's unhealthy, I shouldn't say not all Catholics are like this, not all Marines are like this, but for me, this was this brutal avenue of self-abnegation that I could pursue, and it was really in finding the strength of who I am and really finding the strength of the felt sense of self This is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I like. This is how I'm going to be in the world. Once that became strong enough, I was able to perceive what it was made of, like how my mind constructed it. But I had to study it very closely. And once I saw how my mind constructed it, then all of a sudden I could see its illusory nature. I could see how it was always changing. And so I actually think the thing that's missing for a lot of Dharmic practitioners when they're trying to see through the sense of self is that they can't see the sense of self at all. And they actually need to strengthen that and become much stronger and find their backbones and find what they love and follow their desires and leave behind a lot of childish stuff and eventually get to a point where they're like, yeah, I really like who I am. And now I can see it shimmering. And now I can pick it apart. And now, oh, wow, what's on the other side of that? Well, that's beautiful. Right. So this is sort of the basic construction of what the spiritual center is going to be built around. I have a series of programs in mind that are built loosely on what I learned from my mentor, what I've learned from my own limited practice, and also what Bob Persick wrote about in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and Leela in a recent book on quality. And I want to put these all together and say, look, this is what it means to have a quality self. This is what it means to be a quality person. And everybody's got to sort of find that out for themselves. But quality is something everybody knows without needing to explain it, without needing to. You know it when you see it, right? And so it's like helping people get into that felt sense of that, because the self is the exact same kind of phenomenon. Like as soon as somebody's telling you about their self, they're not really, right. The self exists prior to that. It's a non-dual thing. Um, but anyway, these are the four pillars of my center, and um, this is what I'm hoping to put together. And I've run it past every Dharma practitioner and monk and nun that I know, and I'm getting feedback right now and putting the team together. And yeah, hopefully by the end of the year, have something established.
Godspeed.
Thanks for listening. Yeah.
It's nice to hear. And if I may give you a small suggestion in your
Please.
open vessel of embodiment. Um, um, how do I say this right? Uh, Oftentimes in the realm of the self, and in the realm, and it's overlooked in the realm of embodiment, is the laugh. Humor is the one of the most underrated but obviously divine qualities.
Ah, that's a good point.
And so I would like to invite you humbly, as a clown priest myself, um, to think about
Okay.
improv, and comedy in the realm of embodiment. There's obviously much more. There's great Tai Chi, Qigong, martial arts. I think I love that you're mixing disciplines. I think obviously the future we're looking at is transdisciplinary, and especially religion building, which is a religion as a practice of quality. That's what you're doing. I can see that clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then they don't laugh, these idiots. They're like all fucking serious. What are they doing? They don't swear, they don't laugh, and act like they don't have sex, and bad things happen.
And
So,
bad things happen.
uh,
That's right.
for embodiment, cooking, apple pie, laughing, making silly faces,
Mm-hmm.
whatever else is on that list. So,
Mm-hmm. I'm taking
that
notes.
I am, yes, I can see that, and I appreciate it, and I'm humbly appreciating it,
All right. Yeah.
because
Thank you.
it's very important to me. I think, any sort of, I have my good friend on Twitter. He's at positive_loop.
Uh
Um,
huh.
he's a great. Well, he's one of the Berlin homies, and we've done improv together at at Medley in Berlin, and he has a background, and I think he's cooking something up in that sense. And yeah, we always talk shit about the spiritual teachers who can't have a laugh, you know. So
Good. Yeah.
and any like sort of speakers or people who who are like, I think we were just on the phone yesterday, and we are like, how can you open any speech without some sort of stupid comment, you know, that gets everybody? Because the laugh is like, you know, ha, it gets you. It's the thing where you have a big speech and then you do a joke and then all the information ripples down. Nothing gets stuck in the gunk silo,
I was
you
just
know.
about to
It's like
say it's like that gunk you were talking about earlier. You get a chance to kind of yeah.
uh, I'm glad it's. I thought, oh, that's quite a connection, but I'm glad you saw it too. Okay, that's cool. That's nice. That's nice. Great, man. I love that you're doing this, and I love that we're coming, if we count ourselves to the teapot scene, to a point where people seem to get busy. People seem to get are good with themselves and get over themselves and be like, okay,
Uh-huh.
so how can I do something for the others, right? Or
Yeah.
for the I talked in the last episode on this show with Sheik about it, about building for the scene and from the scene.
Fucking love him.
Um, yeah, of course. And who doesn't? He's a very cute and kind guy,
Yeah, very true.
um,
Hmm.
as we know. And there's like the self-referential. Okay, we built like Sheik's building like community archive, and it's supposed, you know,
Hmm.
it enhances the scene and its capability of sense making through data and stuff. Fantastic. And then you know, maybe your project will also serve the scene, but it will clearly also serve not the scene. And I feel a bit more on that side, of like, okay, I want to take what I learned, I want to bring it to, I want to do organizational consulting with, you know, from divine first principles, whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Uh-huh.
so I want to do coaching for, you know, so people in Germany, I don't know, I think we people need to do something here. It's a bit stagnant, or like it's a bit gotta shake some people up with some silliness, you know, some divine silliness, I think. So um, I like both, but I like that you're on the front of, okay, we're building a house, you know, sort of a center, a place. I love that. I think a lot of the Berlin scene, as it is, came from Medley. Have you heard of Medley?
Mm-mm.
Um, Medley.Berlin was a like a pop up teapot, non teapot crossover crazy residency in 2022 already. And I mean, that's basically how my thirst for IRL connections got perfectly matched with a bunch of teapot people. I was a resident there, met Positive Loop there, and it was a third space. It didn't exist for long, but it was a dream. It was a
Mm.
real life middle of the city in a big glass building. Um, and yeah, it was like everybody was there. Everybody was being silly and messing around and working on their stuff. And since then, I'm like, okay, spaces, third spaces, centers. That's what we need.
I think so too.
That's
Yeah, I think it could be a good bridge, and I think there are a lot of uh, very very intelligent, high openness people that are like similar to us, but aren't going to find our weird little illegible thing for
right.
a variety of reasons. And I love the idea of just of putting a beacon out and saying, "Hey, we're here. This is a real thing, and if you're like us, come find us. We want you here."
I mean, what a dream. How are you gonna find people or make people find you or help people find you?
Well, um, my Twitter reach helps certainly. Um, that's a good place to start. I'm fairly well networked with other Dharma practitioners, and I know quite a few people in Boulder already, and I expect to become better connected there. And but generally speaking, what I hope to do, it's kind of a field of dreams type thing. I'm going to build something. I'm going to build something good, and I'm going to trust that people are going to find it.
Word. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And I have the good fortune of knowing, I should say, like, so many talented writers and posters and meme makers, and just we do in this scene generally. And if they come and they love the center, if I build something that's really beautiful and really useful and valuable to them, they'll write about it, and they'll let other people know, hey, there's this beautiful and valuable thing that's happening in Boulder. And I think that'll be enough.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Godspeed with that. It's a great dream to
Thanks.
put some stakes down in the ground. So that's very beautiful.
I appreciate it.
I feel quite complete here. Um, Very nice
There
hearing
was
from you.
there was one contentious topic you wanted to talk about. Do you still want to talk about that, or you want to leave it
I
off?
was maybe not going to bring it up because I felt quite complete, but now you
Okay,
brought it up, so should we just bring it up? What do you think?
fine. If we feel complete with it, I'd also be happy to do another podcast with you anytime, because this has been great.
Very nice. Um, I think we talked about contentious matters. I was conscious of, I'm thinking a lot, and I'm often very critical of, the cult leader failure mode, power, you know, misusing misusing influence, and I think there was maybe you know some criticism in the field there, but at the same time I feel like we talked about I always feel like we talked now about love, and we talked about these topics, and I often feel like, mm, the way I know that my conversations go with people, I think there's a lot of light to earnestness and integrity, and I think we've talked about things, and I'm sure people have criticisms for you, and if they do, then maybe they come to you or
I
directly,
would
or
love
yeah,
that.
I don't.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
really love that. If any, I don't mind it at all. And if somebody's got something to say, or sees something that I don't, or yeah, I really am open to it if it's done in a spirit of genuine engagement.
yeah, and I think, you know we know how to fight wise, and we I think we invited, and yeah, I mean, this is also as far as my, yeah, judgment goes or something, and I think, yeah, if that sort of willingness is there in the open, and it's earnest, and people have earnest criticisms, and I think also the the knowledge that we're all developing our characters as we go, and um, it's good to get to know you, and even I think I'm pretty good at sniffing out characters who think of themselves a bit too big and complete or something, and I think we wouldn't have gotten along very well. I mean, not to put it all on me, but it's like we're studying, we're learning, and yeah, I don't know. I think I'm happy to keep it at that, um,
Okay,
when it
sounds
comes to
good.
contentious things, so that we have a nice completion here. I'll have a last question for you, but do you have a last question for me?
I wish I'd gotten. I wish I'd gotten. I wish I'd asked you more about what you're working on right now, and I knew a little bit more about the arcs of your projects. But where can I go to learn more about that?
Thank you. I'm in a weird mix of trying to maybe get a conventional job and see what funny path that would take me down, but also seeing that maybe I have, after all, made myself unemployable, and I need to actually commit to like the freelance path, which gets me more down the road of coaching. If you go to my last name, Oler.coach,
Oh, good.
uh, there's my website, which it redirects to my SimonOler.com website. and I'm gonna work in the next week of updating that a bit. And I think I will. I'm currently two things I'm interested in, which are basically the same thing. It's like organizational, like coaching for founders and leaders, trying to be as local as I can here in Berlin. Might be a bit more open to remote stuff. Um, I think the secret Trojan horse of my work is love, because I think life is love and labor, and especially and friends. And I think in maybe Germany there's a bit too much on the labor front there, and I would really love uh, to bring some more love. But I think I also want to be engaging more with the reality here, and see what's actually here, and see in which way I underestimate what's here, and like I'm trying to connect myself back to my surroundings very much. This feels like a bit of a trial for me, and at the same time we're building the scene here in Berlin. I put on 3 week last year with the help of great friends. We're having after this, I'm putting my clothes on and going to a teapot meetup that was sort of knighted by Visa, because my
Mhm.
friend Emergent Vibe was like, I'm in Berlin, what should I do? And Visa was like, put on a meetup. So that's happening now as we speak. So I'm going to
Awesome.
go and
Okay.
go there. And yeah, there's a Berlin gravitational field. And who knows, maybe we'll formalize that under that name a bit, because there's ever since 3 week and in the neighborhood, I'm, you know, living closely to some other Twitter friends, and there's a bit of a neighborhood building, and that's a very passive, beautiful project of love and friendship and art. So maybe we're building an art scene in Berlin. Let's call it that. Oh,
Very cool.
so very teapotty embodied, high standard communication, taking good care of each other type art scene. Not too bad, I think.
Not too bad at all.
Not too bad. So yeah, many people coming through Berlin these days. Everybody's welcome. Text me, and we'll throw a party in your honor, or find something that happens. That's usually what happens. So that's pretty good. Thank you for asking. And yeah, figuring stuff out. I think that's what I'm doing. But yeah, happy to talk to anybody. I really also like being interviewed. I like talking. I like discussing what I found in the realms of labor and love and friends and life. So always down to talk. Um, and my question for you is, what would you like to cast a magic spell?
What would I like to cast as a magic spell?
Would you like to? Yeah, would you
Oh,
like to
would
cast a
I like
magic
to cast
spell?
a magic spell?
Would you leave a spell, a prayer, a thing that's your final words here in this conversation?
Us. Gosh. Um. Um. I wish. I wish for everyone who is listening to this, or who may be listening to this, um, that I wish a great nearness to your courage. I wish a deep and faithful intimacy to your bravery, and being as real as you can be, um, feeling embodiment means backbone. So um, uh, be good to yourself, be good to the truth, have the bravery to live out loud. That's what I have to say.
So may it be.
So may it be.
Thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. See you very soon.
Thanks, Simon. Take care.